Mark Meredith is live in D.C. as more Republican senators say they will object to the results. Mark, good morning.
Pete, good morning to you. Traditionally, the Electoral College certification is a drama-free event, but that's not going to be the case Wednesday when Congress meets to decide whether to accept or reject the results of the November election. On Saturday, 11 senators and senators-elect announced plans to join Missouri Senator Josh Hawley and object to the state tallies. They're demanding Congress appoint an electoral commission and allow for a 10-day audit of returns in some disputed states.
There are millions and millions of Americans that think there are major issues with the election. The best way to be able to do that is get all the facts out and to make sure it's all out there.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell had urged members not to join objections to the Electoral College. Now senators from both parties are urging their colleagues to reconsider. Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar writing, quote, "With all due respect to my Republican colleagues in the Senate who are doing this, can you please get a grip? Election officials across the country, including Republican governors, have certified these results. This is embarrassing." Former presidential candidate and Utah Senator Mitt Romney writing, quote, "I urge my colleagues in the strongest possible terms to reconsider the likely consequences of their actions, for I fear they will do damage to our democracy and our global credibility that cannot be easily repaired." While Congress meets inside the Capitol, outside Trump supporters are expected to gather for large protests over the election. Pete?
Mark Meredith, thank you very much. Leave it to Mitt Romney to worry about his global reputation. All right, this is the first such objection since 2005, when then Senator Barbara Boxer and Ohio Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs Jones challenged President Bush's narrow victory over John Kerry. Let's bring in American Conservative Union Chair Matt Schlapp to react. Matt, good morning. Thanks for being here. So what would happen with this objection, as you have over 100 congressmen in the House and now over a dozen senators in the Senate? They would trigger a debate where finally, at some point, evidence could be submitted, or at least a conversation had, about what's happened in a lot of these states. How do you see it going down?
Yeah, Pete, they'd actually have to do their job. When they write these things in laws that Congress has to take a formalized step and vote to do something like accept these electors, it means you're actually supposed to do the due diligence around that decision, not just rubber stamp it. This is the problem with Congress. It is tend to push away its tough responsibilities that the Constitution and that the law mandates it does. Think about this, Pete. Almost every time recently a Republican has won the White House, the Democrats have taken almost every step to try to influence who the electors are, how they vote. As we said, the last time a Republican was given 4 more years, George W. Bush, they officially challenged the result in Congress. But when Republicans try to take the same legal steps after this very close election, somehow, as you said, Mitt Romney and others chastise them for shaming our democracy in front of the globe. This is outrageous. If judges won't look at these illegal votes, which number in the hundreds of thousands, and I know because I was on the ground in Nevada, if judges won't do that, then the politicians have to take the appropriate steps to do one simple thing: knock out all the illegal votes in the count.
Just as state legislatures should take back that prerogative in places where the numbers just don't add up. As these senators point out, there was an electoral commission in 1877 that looked at voter fraud. There were 5 senators, 5 House members, and 5 members of the Supreme Court looking at that. Do you think there's a chance, because ultimately we're in the House, Democrats are not going to go along with this. Is there a chance we get anything out of it? Some sort of a federal relook at the election?
Well, I think that's why Ted Cruz, first of all, leave it to Ted Cruz to actually read the law to know what the remedies are for illegal voting and voting irregularity and voter fraud. But I think what it actually does is it gives everybody a chance to try to get to the truth. And I think even I could agree, Mitt Romney and I could agree on this, I hope. Dead people shouldn't vote. People shouldn't vote in 2 states. Even honest election officials, of which the vast majority are, there's no way presently to determine whether somebody in Nevada also voted in California or somebody in Philadelphia also voted in Delaware. We need to have a system whereby these things can be checked and to have the time. And right now, no American can look at these results and be certain that illegal votes are knocked out of the count. And it would have flipped states, and it would have flipped the ultimate result. And that shouldn't happen in America.
No, of course not. Just like certifying results that are fraudulent doesn't make them legitimate at the end of the day. Matt Schlapp, I know you're headed down to Georgia. We don't have time.
10% jump in shootings. And in Chicago, a 55% spike in murders. Mayor Lori Lightfoot placing the blame on frustration, anger, and mental health problems. But is that really the reason? Let's ask New York City Detectives Union President Paul DiGiacomo. Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. So when you look at these numbers, I mean, not only in Chicago, but in New York City, the spikes are pretty terrifying to people. Why is this happening?
Well, it's happening because of a couple of reasons. The main reason is that the ineffective laws that were enacted by government has emboldened the criminal element in New York City and New York State. People are carrying more guns and using them with no consequences. They're locked up and let out the next day to victimize more people of the city, which puts the police in danger as well.
So what's the fix here? What needs to happen to make this better?
Well, there's a couple of things that have to be done. The bills and the laws that were put into law and enacted into law have to be changed. Apparently, they are not working. The numbers are so high, like never seen before, that young children, grandmothers, everyone in our communities are being shot and injured or killed. And left out there to solve these crimes are New York City detectives. And they're out there doing it during this coronavirus. And they are not being given the vaccine like some of the other first responders in the city have been. So I find that as a sort of a police reform by government as well. They're not taking care of their police in any way. They have an obligation to, and they're not. And I demand that they give our members in the NYPD the vaccine.
Yeah, you mentioned the vaccine. That was the next topic we were going to get to. And Bill de Blasio's come out and essentially said that the health department was waiting for state guidance and direction as to what to do. Is that explanation satisfactory to you?
Well, it is being administered through the state, and the fire department and the EMTs in New York City have received it. But the New York City Police Department is as important and does meet and are out there in front of thousands and millions of people every day with contact with people with the coronavirus. We had 6 detectives die of this virus, and I don't want to see a 7th.
Yeah.
We have an obligation. Let's get it done.
I don't want to cut you. Yeah. I don't want to cut you off, but we're out of time for today.
Have a real American coffee machine, not the European one that dispenses warm milk and half the time doesn't dispense coffee here in the green room. So do you have good, warm American coffee there on set?
Have you been fighting with that thing again this morning,
Yes,
Jed? I can just picture it.
I've been fighting with it, like trying to get it. Come on, give me some coffee. Won't do it.
Yes, I can picture you wrestling with that thing.
Yeah, he's probably got his backup Mountain Dew. I'm not too worried about him. I was just hoping, Will, that you had a heated blanket out there. Just get someone on that.
I look like a grandma here. I'm covered up in blankets. I got everything going here, Jedediah, that I can make it happen. Pete, we will have coffee. We will do our best to keep you warm. Right. Let me just get through today, and then I'll worry about you tomorrow. I'm going to worry about Griff Jenkins and these races, though, here in Georgia now. Griff is also in Atlanta with me, and he has more on those runoff races. What's up, Griff?
Griff, a seasoned field operator.
Trying not to freeze. I don't have any coffee, Pete, but have Red Bull will travel. And what you're going to find out is what Will already knows, then that is that Georgia is the epicenter now of the political universe. In just 48 hours, Georgia voters will determine the control of the U.S. Senate, and already more than 3 million Georgians have voted. Now, the polls open on Tuesday, so that will be what everyone is watching around the country and throughout the world. Now, what is interesting is that the fight back in Washington over COVID relief is shaping up the final days and hours of this campaign, where incumbent Kelly Loeffler faces Reverend Raphael Warnock, and, of course, incumbent David Perdue facing challenger Jon Ossoff. Now, Loeffler was on the campaign trail yesterday accusing Democrats of playing politics on coronavirus aid. Watch.
I've been fighting for additional relief under this pandemic. They played politics with lives and livelihoods. I was proud to support relief earlier this spring and to support the latest measure.
Warnock is accusing Loeffler of profiting off the pandemic. Now, in the other race, David Perdue is quarantining after possible exposure to coronavirus, but his challenger, Jon Ossoff, taking shots at Republicans on COVID aid.
And after 8 months of obstruction, what do David and Kelly offer? $600. Making $600 is a joke.
And then there's the big thing everyone will be watching tomorrow. President Trump coming down to Dalton, Georgia, tweeting, big rally, 9 p.m., be there. He's going there because in North Georgia, that's where early voting shows Republicans really need to turn the vote out. But there will be a duel from President-elect Joe Biden. He'll be coming to Atlanta to try and turn out big numbers to offset what will be the Republican turnout possibly in North Georgia. So a lot happening there. Now on the campaign trail, going to be very exciting down in Savannah, the southeast coast part of Georgia, because Vice President-elect Kamala Harris going there to rally with Ossoff and Warnock. But you have Kelly Loeffler on the campaign trail, and she'll be going around with South Dakota's Governor Kristi Noem. So big day. You're going to see a lot of barbs being thrown left and right, and a lot of talk about what President Trump has been tweeting about. Will, Pete, Jed?
Thanks, Griff.
Thanks so much, Griff, for joining us. Yeah, obviously this is a big day. I feel like, again, it's like deja vu, a big election week yet again, a lot at stake. We've been talking about some of those structural things that could be at stake, like court packing, also some policy issues that could be at stake, big policy decisions with respect to health care, with respect to climate, taxation, regulation, that obviously could affect people throughout the country. We had Hogan Gidley on earlier, that's National Press Secretary for Trump 2020, and he talked about what he believes is at stake in Georgia if Democrats win the Senate. Take a listen.
Both Ossoff and Warnock are making pledges of not just, embracing and adopting the Green New Deal, which would destroy our economy, but also, make us less secure on the global stage by relying on other nations for our energy. They want to open our borders. They want to make Puerto Rico a state, D.C. a state, pack the court. All the agenda items that have been radical from the beginning, that have been exposed, they are embracing and promising to do.
You don't have to project, you don't have to guess about what the Democrats will want to do should they gain control of the Senate. Jon Ossoff, the candidate here running against David Perdue in Georgia, has made it very clear. Just yesterday, he said, we don't want partisan gridlock. In other words, we don't want anybody in the way of our agenda. Everyone's on the same page about what's at stake here in Georgia. And it's interesting. Over the last couple of months, Pete, I've had various friends call me across the political spectrum.
You have friends?
But they haven't been from Georgia. Well, a few. So it means I fielded like 2 or 3 calls.
Okay.
And they have said, what's going on in Georgia? The point is, everyone knows this isn't just about Georgians. It's about the United States of America. And
Will has a lot of friends, no doubt. But he's right. We're all Georgians now at some level when it comes down to the majority and the balance of the U.S. Senate, considering the shifting sands of Washington, D.C., and the very starkly different views of the left and the right in Georgia. In fact, it was mentioned by Hogan Gidley, it was mentioned by Griff that Kristi Noem will be going around Georgia, and she's done a particularly good job laying out, which I think is very helpful for candidates. It's not just the principles, but how does it affect mothers and families and people who want to earn a living? These results will have big ramifications for that. Another angle on, speaking of livelihoods and delivering for people, is the story of Barstool Sports and their fund and Dave Portnoy, El Presidente, who's now raised millions and millions of dollars for small businesses to fill the gap where, of course, the government has been completely incapable and unwilling, frankly, with $600 to fill that void for small businesses. It's called the Barstools Fund. Again, it's raised, I don't know what the number is right now. I know it's north of $16 million. Well, yet another recipient was revealed yesterday in a powerful way. His name is Alfio Laparo, a restaurant owner. Here's a portion of that video.
We're glad to help. We got it. You're in the fund. We're going to be there for you. And it doesn't seem like it happened to a better place, better guys. So we're very happy.
Unbelievable. I'm shaking right now. This is too much. You're amazing. Whatever you're doing, God bless you.
Yeah, I spoke with Alfio Laparo earlier, a businessman, family business, came over from Italy, saved enough money to start this business, and is really excited about this opportunity to receive assistance because they've suffered quite a bit, like many other people in the restaurant industry in particular, over the last 9 months. Here's what Alfio had to say himself on being chosen for the Barstool Fund.
It was like a godsend. I mean, it was a miracle, really. It was a Christmas time miracle. He called me and he said, "You're in the fund, and we're going to help you pay your bills, and we're going to be with you until this pandemic is over." It was very exciting, very emotional. I broke down and cried, and my whole family. This is a family restaurant. It's a small family operation. All my wife, my children, but they all helped me, and we're trying to get through it. We're all working together and trying to get through this crisis.
Both of you know, I came from the world of sports before this world of news that we've all dove into. Barstool sports fans are called Stoolies. This fund originally started with $500,000 donated by Barstool. That fund, as you pointed out, Pete, is up to, I believe, over $17 million. It's not just Stoolies, it's Americans from across, I'm sure, the political spectrum and across the sports world and into the news world who have donated this fund. And we need to take a moment and just recognize how Americans are coming together for each other through the mechanism of Dave Portnoy and Barstool. You made a joke a minute ago about me having friends. I do have one or two. But the truth is, I remember when I was a kid, Pete, my dad, as he got older, had fewer and fewer friends, and I said, I'm not going to be like that. But that's what happens with men. Our social circle gets smaller and smaller. But you know what we do have, Pete? What replaces it is community. And community is very important, and that's the point I'm making about Stoolies. What a community. I know that same community exists here at Fox News. And what we're talking about here is a community of people coming together to help those who have been hurt so much by this lockdown and pandemic. And so here's Dave Portnoy talking about his community and why they need to come together for these small businesses that have put everything, their lives, their livelihoods, their life investment on the line. Listen to this.
Barstool is a small business that I worked basically 2 decades building. And if the lockdowns and Corona struck around year 10, when we're right on the edge, I would have lost my life's work. Restaurants and bars and small businesses were already stretched to the limit. They already were playing by the governor's rules and trying to do everything they could to survive. And this felt like a death blow. And somebody's like, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? And they're right. So I donated the money and asked for our audience and I've been lucky enough to make acquaintances, rich friends through Barstool. I started shaming them on Twitter to donate. And that's really how it came about.
I love what he said, talking about if this had hit me 10 years ago at that mark, I would have been vulnerable, and he's still got his finger on the pulse of the business community. Plus, if he doesn't save these pizzerias, where's he going to do his pizza reviews? One bite, everybody knows the rules, So without pizza restaurants, you've got no Dave Portnoy and pizza reviews. So there might be a little self-interest in there, too. And, Will, I made fun of your number of friends. You're totally right. I think I did it because I have so few, and it makes me feel better to insult you.
Well, both of you can count me as
it's
one.
Quality,
I understand it's a one-sided relationship.
Quality, not quantity, right?
Allies, as we mark 1 year since the airstrike that killed their top general and terrorist, Qasem Soleimani.
So as Tehran warns of severe revenge, the Trump administration says our military is ready to strike if duty calls.
Fox News contributor and retired Marine veteran Joey Jones joins us now. Joey, welcome to the show. So obviously the 1 year anniversary of the airstrike. We want to get your thoughts on that, but also Iran wanting and seeking revenge. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think it means that they're afraid. I think anyone, throwing out warnings to President Trump this morning is probably afraid himself. What happened a year ago today was a small victory in a war that felt like we didn't have a chance to win, the war in Iraq. We've declared victory there a few times, but yet it seems Iraq is still fighting hard for any semblance of independence in any way to get loose from potential terrorists that may hide out there or put money into there or put militias into there. And when you do an airstrike to kill someone who's organized these efforts, that's a victory. And I appreciate what President Trump did there. I appreciate our military and the fact that a known terrorist who's helped these people is dead today for a year now.
It's a great point. Iran has had such a nefarious role in Iraq for so long that killing Qasem Soleimani is a major victory in the war in Iraq, not to mention writ large the fight against terrorism around the globe. Joey, I got to get your take, though, as well about Georgia. You're a Georgia boy. You know it well. You know the folks on the ground. What's the pulse there of what you're hearing?
Yeah, Pete, I heard you say we're all Georgians now. If you do that, you have to end it with a Go Dogs. We won the Peach Bowl there in Atlanta this week. So
or you can register to vote if you've been there for only a couple of days. I can't say that. It's not authentic.
No, absolutely. You know, I think most Georgians, more than anything, are ready for all the outside money and people to get out of our state and quit telling us what we need to do or should do. But I also think most Georgians are going to show up and vote for our Republican senators. I've been pretty vocal. I'm not a big fan of any of the four choices, honestly, but I am a big fan of conservative policies and keeping the Senate and not allowing Joe Biden and what looks like a recklessly progressive agenda to take hold in the Senate. So I think Georgians understand the importance. I think more than anything, we're just we're tired of being told how important it is. We're ready to go vote, get this over with, and go on with our lives, like most Americans are, with the virus and other things that are plaguing them. We feel like this election, to an extent, has plagued us a little bit.
Hey, really quickly, Joey, to follow up, you did say that last time we were together. You said Georgians were frustrated and not that enthused. So do you think they'll be motivated to show out on Tuesday?
Yeah, I guess my point is the energy in this state is kind of twofold. It's to see this election to be over with and to ensure that Republicans win the Senate. I think just, you know, I'm getting texts literally every hour on my phone. People are asking me, you know, what's going to happen? Why are they getting texts from people out of state, and why are they getting so many texts? And you know, I think I got a text sitting here this morning. And so we're just tired of what we know to be money and people from outside the state of Georgia, primarily on the Democratic side. You've got people in Hollywood saying they're going to move here, and we're just tired of these people acting like they care about Georgia politics or Georgians at all, especially people like John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, who, you know, John Ossoff's about as exciting as stale bread. I love that line because it's absolutely true. He's a poor man's Beto O'Rourke, and you see how successful he's been. And I just don't see how a John Ossoff can win an election, much less one here in Georgia, where we're actually very proud of who we are.
It's one thing to be Robert Francis. It's another thing to be the poor man's Robert Francis. Wow. Joey Jones.
I'm telling you.
Thank you very much. 2 more days to go. 2 more days to go. Hang in there. We appreciate it. We'll see you down there.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, experts warned of a twin-demic as COVID-19 overlapped with flu season. But as it turns out, flu cases have plummeted.
That we have little to none flu cases right now. It's multifactorial, as you just mentioned. First of all, I do want to say the flu is here. Yes, it's significantly less than various other years, but we just had a child die last week of it. So the flu is here. It's just not being talked about as much. But so why are the cases so low? Well, yes, in addition to COVID-19, we have increased hand hygiene, we are socially distancing, and we also have a lot of respiratory droplet precautions. We also have more Americans getting flu shots this year than most other years. About 44 million American adults have gotten the flu shot this year as compared to about 30 million last year. But the biggest single factor is what else has come from COVID-19? Influenza, just like the coronavirus, tends to start in animals, birds, in pigs, in Southeast Asia. In that subtropical climate, it undergoes various mutations all year long, something we call antigenic drift. And because of our high prevalence of international travel, that influenza strain makes its way all across the world, and then it starts to replicate in the cold, dry climates. Well, with COVID-19, air travel stopped. In fact, travel from China to the U.S. really only started to pick up again in late November. From February, there had been no flights coming back and forth, so it's not surprising that those influenza strains didn't make their way to the United States. Now that air travel is starting to slowly increase again, I do suspect that we will start seeing more influenza cases come in. And we have to remember, flu season really starts in the United States. It technically starts in August, but it really starts to ramp up in December and January, making its way through March and April. So while flu cases are low now, it is still possible that they are going to increase over the next few months. So we have to continue to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, if only the Chinese had stopped flights out of their country at the beginning and not just inside their own country. But that's a side point that will remain hung up on. I got to ask about this next point, though, too. We got the vaccine, Operation Warp Speed, huge success, getting it to Americans faster than possible, we thought possible. Yet stats like this have people shrugging their shoulders, trying to understand why. About 60% of nursing home workers in Ohio are refusing to take the vaccine. Now, some of those might be accounted, Doctor, for they have the antibodies because they've had COVID-19. But that number's too high to explain that as well. If these are the medical professionals not wanting to take the vaccine, what does that say?
Well, Pete, great question. And it's a very concerning trend that we're seeing right now with up to 60% of certain healthcare workers who are opting not to take the vaccine. As you mentioned, some people already are antibody positive. They've already recovered from COVID-19, and they don't want to use the dose when we're still in limited supplies. I also know a lot of healthcare workers who they don't consider themselves high risk, whether they are not a high-risk individual from pre-existing conditions. They don't have high risk of exposure in their job. And again, with the limited supplies, they do not feel that it should have been a universal blanket vaccinate all healthcare workers. And I tend to agree with that. I think it needed to be more targeted. We needed to focus more on the vulnerable. But the most concerning trend with this is, yes, there is vaccine hesitancy, and it is largely due to politicization of the science in the manufacturing and research of this vaccine. And unfortunately, I blame the politicians, and I blame how we have truly had partisan politics insert themselves in the quest for science when it has come to this. Anybody who reads the data on these vaccines, you can see what a high safety and efficacy profile these have. And they truly are a key to moving forward and getting us out of this pandemic. So vaccine hesitancy is the biggest concern. We really have to target Black and Latin communities because they have the highest level of vaccine.
By Democrat Raphael Warnock and Republican incumbent David Perdue is trying to hold his seat against Democrat Jon Ossoff. The future of which party controls the Senate is on the line, and it all comes down to Georgia. Here with more at what's at stake in this Georgia runoff election is Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins. Congressman, thanks so much for being with me this morning.
Hey, good morning, Will. Hope you're well. Happy New Year.
Thank you. So we have several different indicators coming in. It's hard to know how much trust to place in all of them. There's polling that suggests Warnock and Ossoff are up, but you and I both know the value of polling over the last 5 years. Still, early voting numbers are in, and it's heavy early voting numbers. Does that indicate that Democrats might be turning out? Is there a reason for concern for Perdue and Loeffler?
Well, there's always reason for concern in an election that takes place in a non-election mode. And people right now, although we've had $500 million spent in Georgia, January 5th election is not normal for any state. So the election turnout is always important. But what we're seeing here is people are ready to get the vote done. They're ready to get out. And early voting has been heavy, and we've seen that happen all across the state. So I think people are ready for this to be over. They're ready to see an election made. Now, it is very close. Any polling right now that shows you anything outside of margin error is, I would say, completely wrong. This is a very close race. And I think really what it's going to come down to now is that turnout on January 5th, on Tuesday. And I believe that is when the conservative voices that typically vote on election day are going to come out. And that's what we're looking at right now. But it is a close race. And I cannot emphasize enough to my conservative friends in Georgia, you cannot, if you want to stay at home, if you feel frustrated about the election, you say, I don't want to be a part of it, then you're helping elect two socialist people to Senate who have no values that really have corresponded to what conservative Georgia really means. Like, they have to show up and vote for Loeffler and Perdue.
Congressman, I hear you emphasizing those points. You know, I'm from Texas. Pete's from Minnesota. We would field calls from friends across this country who recognize the importance of what's going on here in Georgia. But I also hear you talking about, we know there's frustration among Georgians, perhaps with election integrity just 2 months ago. Where is your sense of where Georgians are right now in terms of enthusiasm, frustration, willingness to get to the polls?
I think their willingness to have all of the, as was said earlier by our friend Joey Jones, to just actually have the inundation of ads stop. You cannot watch the ball game. You cannot watch anything with outside groups telling us how to vote here in Georgia. Look, Georgia's pretty conservative. Georgia understands what's at stake here. You have a person in Jon Ossoff who is a trust fund socialist. You have Raphael Warnock, who is a pastor who believes that abortion is okay. I mean, there's just things that are really contradictory to conservative lifestyle here in Georgia. And you have the proven conservative of David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. What we're seeing, though, and it is a frustration. You sense it across the country. People want to make sure that their election and their vote matter. I've been working on that down here ever since November 3rd. I had my own election on November 3rd. But I'm as frustrated as anybody. But we cannot allow frustration for our president, who has done so much good for this country, integrity, but also have to vote. Not voting is letting the Democrats win this argument. And I'm tired of the Democrats winning an argument down here about things like voter suppression when they're the ones actually engaging many times in that. When we've seen minority participation increase, we've seen all of that happen over the last 4 years. We know Georgia is voting. We've got to make sure our voters turn out.
Congressman, really quickly, I think I only have 30 seconds left, so sorry to ask such a big question here, but you brought up that Raphael Warnock's a pastor. I know you're a former pastor. I spoke to another pastor this morning. Yesterday, there was an apolitical march, a prayer march here at the state capitol in Georgia. It seems to be that religion takes on an outsized role in this particular election.
Well, you can't separate faith from who you are. I've always said that, and for anybody that says they can separate their faith from with their everyday actions, don't really understand their Christian faith. So for us, it's very important that we get out, and Christians need to understand that life matters, and this is a vote they can make for life.
All right, Congressman Doug Collins, thank you so much for helping us understand what's on the line here in Georgia in just 2 days. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, Jedediah has you too. Jedediah has more headlines for us this morning.
Thanks so much, Will. An Army drill sergeant is found takes a surprising turn. Watch this. A Florida deputy challenges a Pensacola dance team instead of issuing a ticket. Deputy Brissett's moves bring cheers, screams, and disbelief among the teens. The dance studio thanking the deputy, saying his positive response helps build trust in the community. And those are your headlines. I love that. Pretty good dancer there too, guys.
That's a man who's danced before. Yeah, exactly. He went in and he didn't dabble with it. He said, I am going all the way. And he won.
That's the key. We'll see if Adam Klotz can pull this off. But that's the key to a wedding party or any kind of dance you have to do publicly. It's full commitment. If you go halfway, it doesn't matter good or bad. Adam, are you going to commit 100%? Let's see. Go ahead. You have the floor. Give him a little beat. Let's see if he does.
Commit to what? To dancing? To the forecast? Listen, I'm talking in my apartment really loud. I've been waiting for the neighbors to call the noise ordinance on me. If I could have a cop to show up and dance with me, it'd be worth it. I would love that. So that's a great story, and that is me sidestepping you trying to set me up to dance. I'm going to dive right into this forecast, beginning with the temperatures we're seeing out there, 20, 30 degrees, fairly widespread in the middle of the country, 42 degrees where you are this morning early, Will, because you complained about me not giving you your forecast earlier. A couple of winter systems we're tracking, one moving up the east coast, currently some heavy rain in the mid-Atlantic. On the backside of this system, that is snow from areas like Cleveland through Detroit back toward Chicago. The other winter system we're paying attention to, the Pacific Northwest, that has seen round after round of low-pressure system move on shore here the last couple of days. Higher elevations, that's snow right along the coastline. That's rain, but we do see some winter storm watches and warnings throughout this region. Spots where you could see as much as 12 to 18 inches of snow, and I will leave you here with your temperatures for the rest of the day on this Sunday. The top third of the country, mostly there into the 20s and 30s. If you're living a little farther to the south, temperatures will be in the high 40s to the 50s. Back out to you guys.
Adam, don't worry. Based on Will's logic, his apartment is going to turn into Animal House since his resolution was to party more in 2021. So he better be all in. Right. I mean, I'm not talking like one more beer.
I'll come dance over there.
Bashes.
Then.
Yes.
I have to get an apartment first, Pete. I need a home first for that to happen.
All right, we'll work on that. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. The 117th Congress convenes today with newly elected lawmakers sworn in, but one New York congressional seat still has not been called. Republican Claudia Tenney on her razor-thin race coming up. And from our friends at Fox Bet, download the Fox Bet Super 6 app and play the Georgia Senate runoffs game for a chance to win $10,000. Pick 6 possible outcomes, then watch Fox News on Tuesday.
Put up this thing that we're talking about that Pete did, and you want to see what Google is doing with your photos. Look, we know that they track us. We know that they want to know our every move because they capitalize on that. But come on, at some point you want to turn the faucet off to that. And I want to show you something. First, you want to just check to see how your Google Photo settings are done inside. So go launch your Google Photos app. And then you look in the bottom bar and tap search, and under places section, tap the view all. And in that places section, it's going to show you, and this is wild, all of the places you have taken a photo. Hey, it seems cool, but imagine if somebody else gets this information. When you were there, exactly what photo was taken, and you can broaden out to see the entire country. At first I thought, oh, this is a weather map. I said, no, this is a privacy storm about to hit us. God forbid somebody get a hold of this data. So what's the solution? How do you disable the Google Photos map feature? Now you got to go somewhere else. Do it on your desktop. Go open Google Maps while you're logged onto your Google account. Go to your timeline and then manage the location history. You're going to see the activity controls page come up, and then you see this location history. There's a little slider bar there that's blue if it's on. Now, if you don't want this stuff on a map for anyone to see that can get into your account, turn it off so that it turns gray. There's also this auto delete option, which you can set a period of time for that location data to sort of expire. Now, something to keep in mind here is that it may turn it off for you, me, or someone you share it with, but it's not going to turn it off to Google. They will continue to monitor your location. And hey, that's the trade-off that we got into long ago when nobody was keeping their eye on big tech, and now they've got a big control of our lives. Cyberguy.com will walk you through these steps online at my blog, and also post a video and just a little bit about how it works. But it was worth doing. I mean, it's kind of cool to see the map, right? But then you go, what if somebody else had this?
Yeah,
what if somebody else had this data of my life? What if a judge said, you got to turn over that map, and it's going to tell whatever narrative somebody else wants to tell of your life?
It could also prove your innocence,
Bring
though,
it
Kurt.
back.
Look, I was there at that time. Could cut either way. But you're right. I'm getting rid of it. I'm getting rid of it.
Feels impossible.
It's crazy.
Feels like we've lost it already.
Yeah.
Just unplug.
It's scary. It's scary, Kurt. And as you know, I wrote a whole book on this stuff. Shameless plug, #DoNotDisturb, because it's terrifying. You have to opt out of this stuff. People don't even know it's happening.
Constantly.
You're automatically